All right. I call the meeting to order at, what's that, 5:31?
5:31.
All right, Mr. Clerk, item number 1, please.
Ordered that the mayor or his designee is hereby authorized to prepare, file with the planning board, and record with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds an A&R subdivision of Plot 1 Franklin Street, 109-10044, Plot 3 Petronelli Way, 109-054, and Plot 5 Petronelli Way, 109-055. All city-owned land for the construction of a new road that will intersect Petronelli Way, Franklin, and Court Street. Invited was Mr. Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development, and Mr. Robert Jenkins, Executive Director, BRA.
All right, Mr. May, Mr. Jenkins, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for coming in on this Friday evening. I understand that items 1 and items 2 on our agenda are in the same location or adjacent to each other, so it gets kind of confusing when we're doing this. But item 1 is the allowing the city to do a subdivision of city-owned land so that a new public way, a new street, can be constructed that will connect Petronelli Way to Court Street and improve circulation in downtown as people are trying to get in and out of the new Carpenter Garage. Now, you may remember this was a plan we produced about 4 years ago, Downtown Action Strategy. You can see that there is a road that connects the two sides. That was conceptual where the road is going to line up. What happened is that we've now moved the road further over to the east. So don't get hung up on that plan just yet. What in the next page, you'll see I've highlighted the 3 city-owned parcels of land in 3 different colors, although 2 of them look the same. There's a greenish, a bluish, and a reddish. If you flip the page one more time, you'll see those 3 parcels with the edges of the proposed right-of-way running north to south. And so that lines up with the driveway that enters into Trinity's underground parking for Phase 1 and Phase 2, but it also allows us to make that right turn and into the Carpenter Garage. So I've tried to line that up because if you look at the next page, that's the actual subdivision plan. It doesn't have a lot of reference on it. There's not a lot of meat there for you to understand it. But you can see, I hope, from the previous page where we start out with 3 city parcels, we end up with 6 city parcels, 2 of which are going to become public right-of-way.
All
Clear as mud.
right. Mr. Jenkins, do you have anything?
Thank you, council members. This is all part of the urban revitalization plan with the improved traffic circulation from Court, Petronelli, Main Street, and Montello. This was all part of our plan, our strategy. We didn't know how we were going to pay for it, but with the state's contribution, this is how we're working or paying for it. I believe the grant is for $990,000? $922. But this was all part of our strategy, part of the plan. I know some of the councilors were on that city council when we voted and approved the urban revitalization plan, as well as the municipal garage, Carpenter Garage. So this was all incorporated. This is just one more piece of that plan.
All right. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Thompson?
Yes, thank you. Now, going back to the road that's going to be built there and the $922,000 we received to implement construction. Now, from my understanding, we got to get moving on building that road, correct? What's our time frame that we have to start construction of that road?
Actually, on next Monday's agenda, I believe you will have acceptance of the grant that's coming from DPW. They'll be handling the actual construction of the road, so they'll be submitting the grant. We hope, the road is already designed, and Larry has brought on, Commissioner Rowley has brought on a team to help him do the construction management and to bid the project. And as soon as they can accept the grant, they will bring that team on contract, and they'll start the bidding, and we should be able to start construction of this road, I'm assuming late summer at the worst.
And it's required to approve this subdivision for construction of that road to begin?
We're trying to run them simultaneously, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Anybody else?
Yes. Oh, you go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
Castro followed by Cruz.
thank you. So I have the GIS map of what we have now, okay? So when you take off what we're giving to Mr. Carmen as an easement, and then take off some of the parcel that ends 054, about how much land are we left with, and what are we going to do with it?
We are left with approximately 15,000 square feet, if I remember right. And that has been subject to the discretion of, well, the redevelopment authority has issued a request for qualifications. They have identified, well, I'll let you speak.
Thank you, Mr. May. Councilor Nicastro, those are designated for development. The BRA has put out a request for qualifications, which I think I reported must have been like 2 or 3 months ago, where we received almost 17 developers' request or information qualifications. So that is being designated as one of the sites to be developed, new construction.
Okay. Mr. Carmen has told me he's interested in that. He thought that would be a very
He and
complementary
about
piece to
3
his
others.
house next door.
Yes, he and about 3 others are interested.
Okay. And then,
Can I address? So, once we start moving forward on this subdivision, now that the Carpenter Garage is open, we'll be able to move the people off of the surface lot, and we'll be coming forward with an order to City Council shortly that will allow the city to transfer those properties to the BRA as part of the urban renewal plan, and they'll be then responsible for the disposition of those parcels.
that was going to be my next question. Okay. My next question is the parcel next to 054, which ends in 055, most of that is going toward the road, but we're going to have some left. And it almost, on the plan that you've provided of the changes, it almost looks like it's going to be a walkway, promenade.
That's possible.
Which,
Point of information, which plan should we be looking at? The one by J.K. Holmgren or the one by BSC Group?
BSC.
BSC.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
So are you referring to the parcel that is adjacent to Ted Carmen's? 28?
No. I'm looking at the one next to that. It's 109-055. And it seems like most of that is going to become this road that we're talking about this evening. But there's going to be some of it left over. And it looks like on your plan by BSC Group, it might be shown as Lot C.
That is correct, Lot C.
And what is that going to be?
Lot C is proposed to be, as part of the redevelopment process, to be combined with the other 2 parking lots on that site and the frontage all the way down to Montello Street. That gives the redevelopment authority about a 30,000 square foot lot for redevelopment. The way that the RFP was set up is that, our RFQ, I'm sorry, Robert and the Redevelopment Authority will choose a couple of different developers that have been pre-qualified. He'll ask them to submit proposals. They will be responsible for acquiring the adjacent properties that aren't theirs, with the BRA's muscle behind that. But if they want to build a project of that size, they will have to enter into a redevelopment agreement with Robert for the parcel that they own and the adjacent parcels.
Okay, so now let's cross Franklin Street, and there's the lot over here, and it's 109-044. And it's the same thing, it looks
That
like.
lot E?
The same thing will happen there.
It's Lot D and Lot E.
The same thing will happen there.
Part of it will become Lot E, and the rest of it will become Lot F, right? But there'll be some left over.
Yes.
Okay.
The same applies. The redevelopment authority is going to expect a developer who's interested in that lot and the lot that's immediately to the west of that, which is currently a car repair shop. The redevelopment authority is kind of using this as because they will control the property, to be able to bring in a developer to take the whole site and make something new out of it.
Okay, so the timeline is, we approve this plan showing this new street, and then the parcels all around it get conveyed to the BRA.
With your department authority's blessing or authority, yes,
Okay,
for development.
okay. Okay, I think that's all I have so far. Thank you.
Counselor Cruz?
I think I've got it now. So the road will run from Court Street to Franklin Street to Ward Street.
Correct.
And then, so this last page shows those white lines are the outside of the road.
Correct, sir.
Okay. All right, I think I'm fine. Thank you.
All right.
It's a little bit of loaves and fishes. We start with 3, we end with 6, and then we end up with 4, because 2 of them become road.
Any other counselors? Any other questions? Chair would look favorably on a motion.
Second.
No,
motion,
motion to recommend favorably.
I second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? All right, I meant to put up my hand up for in
I was
favor.
gonna say,
I
did you
was
vote?
too busy trying to count the votes. Oh, boy. This is my first time chairing something, if you can't tell.
Doing
All
fine.
right, so that passes. It'll be recommended favorably to the full city council. Item number 2, Mr. Clerk.
Ordered, the City of Brockton grants to 28 Petronelli LLC an easement over city-owned land identified as map 109, Route 054, Plot 30 Ward Street, for purposes of pedestrian and vehicle ingress, egress, and access to its parking and dumpster storage to facilitate the redevelopment of both parcels. And further, that the City Council authorizes the mayor to execute the grant of easement and agreement and to take other actions necessary to carry out the terms, purposes, and conditions of the same. Invited Mr. Rob May and Mr. Robert Jenkins.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and council again. If you've looked at any of these maps, you'll know that 28 Petronelli Way is built pretty much lot line to lot line. It is tight on there. Mr. Carmen wants to, instead of going through the 40R process, would like to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and apply for a use variance to allow for development. A property of this size, he feels setting aside 20% of the residential units for affordable is going to be very difficult for him to make that balance, and so he needs to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, we all know and love Chairman Ken Galligan. He is a stickler on parking and unloading. And so because this property is lot line to lot line, he has an agreement with the parking authority to park inside of the Carpenter garage. But in the meantime, when you come home with your groceries, you've got your hands full, how are you going to, you're going to schlep them from the parking garage? If you're young, you might, but some people may want to pull to the side of the road. And unfortunately, if you pull to the side of the road on Petronelli Way, you've now blocked Petronelli Way. So what we're proposing is creating a small alleyway easement that will connect between Petronelli and Franklin. It's just as a pass-through to allow for 3 cars to pull to the side, drop off, pick up, and then space for a dumpster. And then this also benefits the other parcel from where this property is being taken, because their garbage and pickup and access will also be off of that same driveway. And I've tried to color code the map. The area that would be parking is in blue. The area that would become the drive lane or the alley is in red. And I don't know if alley is the right term, but it's
Makes sense.
a lane, an alley.
All right, counselors, questions?
So give me that again about the other building? Somebody else having an easement to also?
What it allows, if you don't mind, Rob?
Oh, sure.
What it allows is functionality of one building that is being developed, 28 Petronelli, and also the building that may be developed next door. It allows what Rob calls an alleyway. I call it a functional, kind of like a driveway. UPS can pull in, 3 cars can pull in, the dumpsters will be there. It's more to make the building more functional, to be quite honest, without blocking Petronelli Way.
Counselor Cruz?
So you're saying though for that future development of that other lot, but
They could also apply to use that easement. What the
apply
city-
for it, but
Well, they would apply. Well, the city would give Ted Carmen an easement. It's not his. He just has an easement, a right to use it. The other building also may have a right to use it if they need it. They also have more land.
but
may
they
not
would have
need
to
it.
come to us for it.
Exactly.
Well,
Or the zoning.
Actually, Counselor, if I may, I'm sorry. When that parcel is transferred to the BRA and sold, it'll be sold with that easement on it.
But that's not what we're voting on, that's why you can't, that's my question. We have in front of us an easement for Mr. Carmen for that building.
Yes, the blue area is an exclusive easement. The red area,
Which thing are you looking at now?
Do you have one of
This
these?
this
The
one,
blue and
Counselor.
red?
Okay, that one.
Okay, that's what you should be looking at.
So that's the joint homegrown one.
And the red is not exclusive, it's a drive-through. Correct. It's going to be one way. And the blue is exclusive for 3 parking spaces and a dumpster.
And parking.
Yeah, parking spaces, yeah.
So the red is part of what we just voted on.
the red and the blue are currently part of a city lot that
That we
we
just
just
voted-
approved.
That we just approved to a
Put
subdivision.
subdivision on, yes, at the opposite end of that lot.
Okay.
Well,
So,
This is where it gets confusing.
yeah, and I think what we're voting on right now is to give an easement to one particular piece of property.
Correct. That's what you're voting on now, correct. An easement, which is that red area.
Red and blue.
The red and blue.
Yeah.
I consider them both, but
So
one is
this-
exclusive.
This is gonna become a public way,
Correct, an easement.
and so the future development, the BRA can't give an easement.
We can't,
But-
but whoever is chosen as developer will once again, if they want to, mind you, that other side has a lot more land than 28 Petronelli.
Right.
They may not need that.
We really would prefer they don't build lot line to lot line.
And I might agree with you too, depending on who the developer is and what they're proposing. This is all speculative at this point.
Right.
But we know Ted Carmen needs
not
that.
that big.
Right,
Yeah.
but it just, and that's what I think we're all set, we're probably gonna be doing that shortly. But then I heard and this other property will have an easement. No, they won't. At this point, they
They have
won't.
to come to you. Well, to you with the zoning, they have to come in order to.
No, the
Right.
easement would have to come from,
It's an
no, that's what I'm saying. They won't own that
by the
property.
city. They won't own it. They'll
That
own
property
it.
is
Right
part
to
of the
use it.
street
Have the right to use it.
as a public, as a drivable public way,
Right.
just like anybody else in the
Just
public
like
has a
any-
right to it.
Exactly.
So we're not, I'm just, maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves here, but what I'm hearing is, we're talking about the other piece of property having the right to use it in the same way. They won't.
They have to,
They would
once
have to come
again,
fr-
they have to. I
And
don't
they're
know
on
if
the
it's
other
to do with
side of it.
zoning, they have to come to someone in order to get that put into their title when they do the acquisition of that particular property.
And if we were to look at an easement on that side of the street, now we're totally blocking the way.
Quite possibly, yes, Council.
Now we're
Blocking
blocking that new street we just put.
If he gives an easement, he's saying if they
No,
give an easement.
they run parallel with each other.
That's
so
not the new
this-
street.
So on this,
So this is not the new street,
No.
No.
It's not the new street,
The
no.
other side of that parcel.
the other side of that.
So the new street is on the east side of that parcel. This easement is on the west side of this parcel.
We got both diagrams at the same time. I had that same
Yeah,
thought
that's.
for a little while.
Okay, that's,
so Counselor, just to make this a little clear, where this blue and red is.
Yeah.
This is the easement and the exclusive parking or driveway that Ted Carmen. Over on this side is where the road is going to go.
okay.
So it's
On the other side of that lot, okay, because they're not very well,
This is the GA.
yeah, I get it now.
See the
So
three?
we're doing them right here.
It's right here.
Street's right there, yeah.
That's right.
Now, this easement, does this go through?
Absolutely. It goes
From
from
Petronella
Petronella to
to
Franklin.
So it's gonna become a shortcut for every Tom, Dick, and Harry, including Tim Cruz, that's
Well,
trying to beat traffic.
Once again, you know we're putting in a road on the other side, so
Yeah.
hopefully it won't be used. And then hopefully there will be some type of private
By
side.
the way, well, I mean, we have lots of places, I used to be able to drive from BCA all the way to, down the other end of Main Street, never going on a public street out here.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a sign out here, that's not a public way, by the way. Well, right out here by the parking lot going out to East Elm.
East Elm. Yeah, that's not, but
We use it as such, but it's not.
Exactly.
that's a road, isn't it?
No, it's not a road.
Okay.
Part of the, actually, and I believe it's actually not even part of the City Hall property, but I could be wrong on that,
It is City Hall property.
City Hall property.
I didn't know.
But we've put up signs and have people, we actually used to go two ways, now we only go one way,
And that's
some
the
people.
other-
But my point is, I'm not sure, I mean, this is, we have to give Mr. Carmen the easement because he needs it for that piece of property, but
Right.
this could lead to some pretty bad traffic issues down the road. The fact that, I guess it would have to go through because there's not space to turn around, but,
That's right.
Well, this is the other thing, because Petronelli is going to be, or is a two-way, and you're putting in a road as well as the cut-through. So hopefully, people will look at this and see cars parked, trash cans, and kind of understand. If you're going to walk through it, makes sense. But if you're going to drive through it,
To get to Franklin?
To get
go
to
back up
Franklin?
Main Street,
And then have to take a right, then the left to
Left?
get on the
that's
new
a lot
road.
of-
yeah.
That's not worth it.
if you're sitting at a light, there's a lot of people who think it's worth it. Okay, now I see at least where we are, thank you.
All right. As it's not technically a city street or a public way, you might also be able to put speed bumps or label it as one way. There's a
Yeah,
way
just
around it. But yeah, no, that where they're, no matter how illogical it seems, somebody does like running through. Next I have Councilor Mendez.
Yeah. So this easement is going to run with the property, right? So whoever purchases this property, it's always going to be there in future. That's what I assume. Yeah, the next question, yeah. The next question is who's going to be responsible in maintaining that easement? It's also going to be the grantee and holding the city harmless if anything were, yeah, it's all that. Thank you. Okay, thank
That's it?
you.
All right, Councilor Thompson.
Yes. So what we're doing tonight is we're creating just the one easement, right? The red and the blue.
Two.
See, now that's,
Oh.
so it's one easement, and then additionally,
the thing.
with exclusivity to Mr. Carmen's project. Is that, so there are two things happening.
There's one easement with two parts. The first part is the
Cut through.
cut through. The second part is the exclusive parking garbage area.
Okay. S- One easement, two parts. Understood. That's all I had.
All right. Counselor Nicastro.
Thank you. I want to point out that the order filed with the city council references a grant of easement and agreement, but the document is actually just called an easement agreement. So you might want to amend the order before we vote on it. And then, I've talked to Ted Carmen today, and he's always so nice. There are edits that this easement agreement needs. For example, it refers to the parties as Brockton and Petronelli, but then two paragraphs later, it starts talking about them as grantor and grantee. It refers to a benefited property, but it doesn't define what the benefited property is. I did have questions about easement number 1 and whether that was going to be a public passageway. I know it's not exclusive, but is it public?
Mr. Jenkins?
I would think that, Rob, is that easement it would be public.
Because it
Easement, when you
remains,
say public, though, do you mean, when I think of public, I think of the city owning it, and the city would own it. The city is giving the easement.
Right.
Yes. So it is
yeah, they're
public.
giving a right of use, yeah,
Correct.
sure.
Yeah. So it is public.
Okay. And then, on the last 2 pages, it correctly lists Edward C. Carmen Jr. as the grantee, but then under the notary for that, it lists Theodore Carmen as manager. So I spoke to Ted about them, and I told Ted I would call Jim Burke on Monday. So we were thinking, I spoke to Jack about it beforehand, maybe we'd pass it with the understanding that these little things would get cleaned up. Now, I have one other question. So if the project is receiving 2 easements, are those taxable to the project? Because certainly it is a great benefit to have parking spaces and a space for your dumpster on land that doesn't belong to you, right? And so I'm wondering, is that going to be taxable to the property?
Once the properties are transferred to the BRA and then sold to a developer, that is all taxable.
I would assume so as well. Once again, it'll be part of the agreement. The whole lot, whatever he gets, is taxable.
But that's not what I asked, because Ted Carmen already owns the property.
He owns the building, correct?
Yeah, he owns the building, and he's getting an easement to park 4 cars and place a dumpster on the land of the city. And so, is that benefit taxable to him, since it is a benefit?
I would say that the parking and where he's putting his trash is taxable,
So
Counselor.
that will be included in his tax bill, part of his assessment.
Absolutely. He's going to own that piece of it.
Well, he has the right to use
A
it.
right to use
He
it.
won't own it.
He's going to have a right to
He
use
has the
it.
exclusive right to
To
use it.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, and are we sure about that?
I'll verify it. When he comes to the BRA, we will verify it. And that's my intent, is that it would be, because he has exclusive rights to it,
Yeah.
it's taxable in my book. I'd have to check with our attorney, but I'll verify it.
Okay.
If we move this forward today, is it possible to get that before it goes to council?
Absolutely.
It's not going to go this Monday. We're going to have, a couple of weeks, so there's a good amount of time.
Have that before the end of next week.
I appreciate it.
It'll be the first Monday in April.
Okay. Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you, that's it. Yeah, what?
Regardless of whether it's taxable by Mr. Carmen or by whoever owns the remainder of the lot, somebody will be paying tax on it.
Okay.
Once it's sold.
Okay, well, the 3 parcels that are comprised, that we talked about in the first matter, their taxable value, if you believe the assessors, is $403,000. And so I understand we're rejigging it all, but that lot 054 by itself is worth $144,500. So he is getting a benefit. And so I would like to see that it is part of his tax bill. And I think that's the way it works, but I want to make sure.
It will be someone's tax bill, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I would expect that even after the BRA sells the parcel to be built next door, that this land, this passageway will remain the city's, right? But he'd still have a benefit in it.
It will be owned by whoever owns that parcel.
The passageway?
No,
Yes.
No,
no, it's not.
no,
Okay.
I don't think so. I would think that you would make a new lot line and.
We're not subdividing the parcel. It is an easement.
So ultimately, the easement will be on the land of the next
Yes,
entity to own the property, you're saying?
yes.
It won't remain public. The underlying land won't remain public.
No, I don't believe so.
So the next person to own that property next door and to build on it will be buying subject to that easement
Yes,
and the guy next door's ability to park 4 cars and a dumpster. Okay.
Is that good, Counselor?
Those are my questions. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Cruz?
Yeah, I piggybacking on what Councilor Castro is talking about, I disagree, unless I'm totally misunderstanding. The piece of property, the red and the blue,
yes,
is owned right now, is part of that other lot, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the
Correct.
city owns it.
So we're granting an easement that will, the grantor in the future will be the owner of that other lot.
yes.
So in other words, we're selling that other lot with an
With
easement,
that,
With that burden. With that burden,
with the easement.
yeah.
So the other person will own all of that property. So
Yes.
Mr. Carmen won't be the one paying taxes on it, the owner of the property.
the owner of the
will
property will be,
Okay.
Right, but that's not what you said a minute ago. You
well, I
said-
did say whether it's Mr. Carmen or the owner of that property, somebody's going to be paying tax on it.
So we have a piece of property that we're slicing off an easement on.
Yes,
The other person won't need an easement. We were talking about a minute ago, they're gonna own the property.
they're going to own the whole property, yes.
So
They
I don't know
need-
why we were talking about the fact that we would need to give an easement on, to the other.
I thought we would have to give them this.
So this other lot, whichever number it is, I don't have
Yeah.
in front of me.
It-
This other lot, we're gonna put out an RFQ. Somebody's gonna come in and say, we wanna put in 50 units of housing and build on this. They then will own that for whatever we decide to sell it to them, and they will buy it with the easement to Mr. Carmen's building.
Yes, sir.
And then, so they will be paying the taxes, and then it is not public, it's not a public way
Right.
at all.
Right,
So all we're really doing is, if somebody else already owned that, they'd be selling the easement. They'd be
Correct.
making a deal with Mr. Carmen
Correct.
to give him an easement.
right.
Okay, that's much clearer, but it wasn't what we,
Wasn't what I thought.
wasn't what we were talking about 5 minutes ago.
Right,
So it won't be Mr. Carmen, it won't be Mr. Carmen now. In theory, there will be an addition to his
Right.
value,
that's right.
because he has this easement, so
Yeah.
his property will be theoretically assessed at a higher rate than it would be without the easement, because it's worth more that way, but it's much clearer this way, but that's not what we were talking about a few minutes ago. I understand now, but this was, yeah, this was not presented as well as it could have been, so I think I have it now. So we're granting an easement that will pass with the sale of the land to the next builder, to the next owner. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm going to recommend favorably.
all right, is there a second? And we
Well,
have
we're
an
gonna-
amendment as well.
Correct. So I make a motion to amend the order where it states the city council authorizes the mayor to execute the attached grant of easement and agreement. I'd seek to amend that to the following language: City council authorizes the mayor to execute the attached grant of easement, thereby removing the words "and agreement."
It's actually called an easement agreement.
So it's the word "and" that's objectable?
Counselor Nicastro?
Well, I would either, you want them to be consistent. So either change the name of the document to mirror what's on your order, or change your order to mirror what's on your document.
Understood. So let me rephrase my requested amendment.
Yep.
I would seek an amendment, the order, which currently reads, City Council authorizes the mayor to execute the attached grant of easement and agreement, to the following language, where the City Council authorizes the mayor to execute the attached easement agreement.
Right.
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
I make a motion to recommend favorably as amended.
I second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. On the motion, Councilor Nicastro, I believe you had asked that this be contingent upon the Scribner's errors being fixed?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Clerk, do we just say that, or do we have to? Okay.
The motion was made to recommend favorably as amended.
Motion, yeah, as amended. And then we would like to see the Scribner's errors fixed. All right, yep. All right, all in favor? All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all. All right, Mr.
Thank-
Clerk.
Thank you, Joanna. Have a good weekend.
Stay healthy.
You
Right.
as well.
Item number 3, Mr. Clerk.
Ordered that the City of Brockton remove its order of July 22nd, 2002 regarding the property located at and known as 7 Melrose Street, map 164, Route 326, Plot 7, that declared said lot as non-buildable so that possible development may take place, and to execute any documents necessary to lift any restrictions in the deed to said property. Invited Attorney John McCluskey.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the committee. I represent Gormath LLC. The principal is David Gormley. He purchased this lot, Plot 7 on Melrose Street, at tax title foreclosure auction. And shame on him, he didn't have an attorney when he did it. As I get into this and as I do more research, I've submitted a memorandum to you with exhibits that really lays out quite a few interesting items of law. But the first thing is that he went to this auction, and it was represented to him by Ben Albanese, who was the auctioneer, that in fact it was a buildable lot. He paid $50,000 plus an $8,000 commission, I guess it is, directly to Ben, and proceeded then to record the deed and went to the building department, submitted a request for buildability. Now, normally, what would happen in the auction process is that Ben used to ask the building department to issue a buildability determination. But it was, in his words, it was taking so long that he made the evaluation himself. And he came to the conclusion that, in fact, as a city representative, he represented that this lot was buildable. So Gormley buys this, pays $58,000, goes to the building department seeking a building permit, and they tell him it's not buildable. He submitted a buildability application, came back and just basically said it wasn't buildable. He hasn't done the title, but he owns it, and he's wet behind the ears. Lo and behold, as we get into the, he asked for his money back. That didn't happen. And so the only way around this, we can find out, or we can determine, by the way, we found out through April at the building department that there was in fact a deed restriction. So I started looking into this and finding out about the deed restriction. This property was taken for taxes twice. One for 1991 taxes. I think it was Arlene Federoff owned the property in trust. She lost it, and several years later, the city finally took it, got a tax foreclosure judgment, and held on to the property for 5 years. They didn't auction that lot the first time. In fact, what happened is that they sold the lot to the abutting owner, the Dumases. So the Dumases didn't want to pay a lot of money for it, $2,800, And so the city decided to put a restriction on that. Out of the city comes a treasurer's deed that recites that, in fact, it was sold at auction. It wasn't sold at auction. It was sold in a private sale with the Dumases. The deed that they should have gotten would have been from the mayor, because that's how you sell property at private sale. So that was the first problem that we've just sort of uncovered. Then the Dumases sold their 2 parcels to the next people, who again, they were paying the taxes on their principal residence, but weren't paying the taxes on this lot. Therefore, the second tax foreclosure. That tax foreclosure ended up in an auction, and my guy bought the property. Several interesting points here. First of all, deed restrictions or negative easements of the nature by a municipality have to be for a public benefit. There's no public benefit here. It was just, they just sold it for cheap money to the next door neighbor and walked away. So question, and I've got it in my memo, there's several cases that basically say, you know, you can't really do that. But that being the case, now we've got a title question on the deed that went to the Dumases, which goes down the road and really questions whether or not the city, in fact, even had proper title to sell the property to my guy. The next question is the public benefit. If there's no public benefit, really, it's a questionable deed restriction. But the city ended up with title again. So they have this deed restriction, and now they've got title to the property. There's a thing called the doctrine of merger. So the merger means that, in fact, the deed restriction goes away. Well, if I stand here and you agree with me and say, hey, it's gone away, well, aren't you satisfied? No, because if we go do the title and he goes and gets a mortgage and builds a house, the title examiner is going to say, you got bad title here, and you got a deed restriction. You got to get rid of it. So we're looking for you to, on the first step, is to take the deed restriction away. I think, by the way, that the lot itself is a grandfathered lot under Section 2712 of the ordinance, in that it's not adjacent to other vacant lots, and I think it qualifies under 2712. And the zoning board, for many, many meetings now, has been sort of confirming that, and they're saying to the building department, would you quit bringing these things to us and just, they're grandfathered lots and let them go. But I think what's going to happen is that we're going to end up in front of the Board of Appeals if, in fact, we can get rid of this restriction. I was talking to another counselor, I actually emailed about this, and he said, you know, why should this guy have a windfall? Well, wait a minute. He started saying the lot was worth $90,000. This lot isn't worth $90,000 because there's another problem. There's no sewer. There's no sewer line in front of the lot. So in order to get sewer, he's going to have to bring in a line from, he's got a tentative agreement with a butter to bring sewer across the roadway, or across the other lot. That's going to cost him 20 grand. So, and with all these problems, his legal bills are mounting as well. But, you know, so he was the highest bidder. He paid fair market value. That's what the city sold it to him for. If the city thought it should be worth 90, they should have not sold it to him for 58. So plain and simple, there's lots of title issues here. I think we may have to come back to the city and get some kind of a corrective deed at some point. I've got to consult the title company. But we're simply asking you to right a wrong here. Yeah, my guy was a dumb guy. He didn't do the title, didn't pay attention. He didn't pay attention to anything other than what Benny told him. And Benny said this is a buildable lot. He believed it. Incidentally, Benny was the assistant city solicitor when this deed restriction went on. He probably authored it because he did a lot of the real estate stuff. I'm not criticizing Ben. He probably didn't remember it. But, you know, the city knew or should have known, and now they need to make it right.
Councilor Cruz.
How you doing, John? I have a lot of problem with this. First of all, as far as whether we can put deed restrictions on, this was sold as part of the abutters program to the first people. And we've put deed restrictions on lots of things. And first of all, he didn't pay the city $58,000, he paid the city $50,000. The $8,000 is part of the fee he pays to the real estate custodian, which we used to get that ourselves when Mr. Brophy was the real estate custodian. You didn't get the extra 10%, did you?
I personally got nothing.
You personally got nothing. I thought so.
The auctioneer and the
And the idea that Mr. Albany's told him was a buildable lot, I've talked to a couple other builders, they all knew this wasn't, that this had a restriction. And this Gormeth, is that the name of it?
That's the company.
He's not wet behind the ears. He knows what he's doing. He took a flyer that he thought it was worth it. He owns lots of other properties. This isn't somebody who came along. And the public auctions for the real estate, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brophy, because you did handle them for many years very well. It is very well clearly told, buyer beware, you buy this at your peril, correct? Am I wrong?
When I was the real estate custodian's properties were sold, as is, we made no determination on anything.
On anything. And in fact, I mean, if Mr. Albany's verbally said that to him, shame on Mr. Gormley or Gorman, whatever it is.
Yep.
You know, we had another one late last term trying to take off a restriction. There was a reason the counselor at that time wanted the restriction on there. The public good, that's a matter of opinion. Not having a house there for those neighbors was a public good. You know, that's a debatable point. That's a gray area that you know, what you would consider the public good and what I might consider the public good are two different questions. You know, we've done a lot of work together, and I just have problems, and I've watched builders, I've gone to some of these, and I'm related to some of the builders that buy these, and they know, these guys know, and sometimes they'll take a flyer and say, I'll get that one through. Whereas other builders say, I'm not wasting my money on it because I don't think it'll get it through. This guy knew the deed restriction was on there, in my opinion. I don't know that he had gone that far into it. I've had other people call me say, I just found out it's not a buildable lot, you gotta help me get my money back, and I say, no, you're in business you're a builder, and I get that, and that's fine, but you made a mistake. It's not the city's mistake, it's your mistake. And I just have a tough time with the idea of the fact that there was a restriction put on by a former council. It changes the value of the land. You know, if we took the deed restriction off, let's go back to auction.
It's not worth 50 grand.
Well, it's worth whatever the public thinks it's worth, whatever those builders think it's worth. He went to that auction and bid $50,000. There are other builders who would, if there was no restriction on it, probably would have bid, if they knew it was a buildable lot, they would have bid more. So it's the same thing that happened last year on Richmond Street or Battle Street. I just personally have a problem with taking the deed restrictions off. You know, this isn't, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith who are 90 years old and had no idea. This is a professional builder who knows what he's doing, and he took a flyer, and now he's finding out, oops, I'm losing out on this one. That's just my opinion, so thank you. Thank you, Mr.
One point.
Yeah.
Have you seen the lot?
Not for years. I mean,
It's a mess. It's right across from a park.
had he seen the lot?
Yeah, it's
What he bid, had he seen the lot?
it's unsightly. There's,
Yeah.
you know,
I understand that, but
and he's not going to clean it up.
there's a theory behind it, you know, behind the whole idea. The restriction was put on, and he went and took a flyer on it, thinking he'd build on it. You know, I get that.
You know, the problem is if we can't get this resolved here, it's going to get resolved someplace else.
Court, I don't believe will take the restriction off.
I'm presenting to you a viable way to get this done. He's going to build a house there. The lot's going to be cleaned up. Let's get this thing moving.
I'm all done, thank you.
Okay, all right. I see the hand. I'm going to go down in order. Next is Councilor Thompson, followed by Mendez, followed by Nicastro.
Good evening, Attorney McCluskey. So, quick question. So when the prior homeowner purchased it through the land sale, where you said it was a private deal between the city and the Dumases or whoever that original...
Prior owner.
The prior owner.
Titled in 2002 from a 1991 tax taking.
Okay. So why did not the the lot merge at that time?
Why did it what?
Why did not the two lots? If was she in a butter? Like,
Yeah, this was an adjacent lot to the homeowner that they just
Okay.
didn't pay the taxes on. They paid their own taxes on the house lot and let this one go. And there's a little junky old shed on it, and, you know, I don't know why they did it. They probably think they could just use the land now without anybody building on it.
but was this post 68 in the doctrine of merger when they were both owned in common ownership?
The doctrine of merger doesn't apply to the house lot and the vacant lot. The doctrine of merger applies to so for example, if I borrowed money from you and I didn't pay you back, and I gave you a deed, say, Jeff, here you go, I didn't pay you, here's a deed. That mortgage merges with the ownership, and the mortgage goes away. That's the same type of thing here. So the city had this deed restriction, then they had title to the property. The doctrine of merger means that the deed restriction disappears.
Right, wouldn't that have disappeared once the abutter purchased the property from the city?
No,
No.
no, because the city was the beneficial owner of the restriction, so to speak, and they were subject to it when they purchased that for $2,800. So they took that subject to.
Okay.
It doesn't merge with their ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then secondly, and I just want to confirm, it was my understanding that this was not an abutters program purchase, right? Not in the past when the city sold it, but it was abutters. No, it was never a part of the abutters program, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure of that. I didn't see any paperwork to that effect.
Because it's only through the abutters program can we add the restriction, correct? Or no?
You know, quite frankly, I'm not familiar with the abutters program.
I can lend a little to that. The abutters lot program strictly deals with lots that are less than 5,000 square feet, which is the state minimum for a buildable lot. So therefore, even if you sold a lot that was 4,000 square feet to an abutter, they could not build on that lot separately. In many ways, it was, because it was a non-buildable lot, the city would sell it for as non-taxable, really minimally taxable, for someone to take care of the property.
So some of the, as Councilor Cruz, you were speaking about other properties that were discussed under that specific program before, where through the abutters program, our deed restriction was implemented. This is not that, correct? Because this was, I don't believe, a purchase through the abutters program.
On the record, it just looks like a private sale by the Dumases from the city. It didn't go to auction. There's nothing in the deed that references an abutters program.
Point of information, and because then I may be wrong on everything I'm just talking about. How would the city have sold it to them otherwise?
Even if a property is foreclosed by the city, it can be sold at public auction without council approval. However, properties that have been auctioned can also be sold with council approval, and even if it's over 5,000 square feet.
I think the mayor has to sign that deed, though. Statute says the mayor.
It all depends on the council order, because if the council order to actually sell it says the mayor or treasurer collector, real estate custodian, whoever it may be, that person can then sign the deed. And this one actually, selling it to the Dumases was a quitclaim deed.
So would the city council have the authority to put a deed restriction on that sale?
That is a question, I mean, I'm not sure of that. I'd have to ask my attorney at outside legal counsel. But it has been done in the past.
Deed restrictions are supposed to confer a public benefit. And, what's the public benefit here? They sold a lot to somebody for $2,800.
The public benefit is
Green space.
reduced density.
Yeah. There's
And-
no
and-
question about that.
And in those years, Brockton was doing a lot of that.
I know that when, I've had conversation with one of the assistant city solicitors when this all happened, and it was questionable then, he recalls this transaction, whether you can do that, but, you know, that's, I'm not going to argue that here, but
No.
And what is his
Counselor-
name, Ben Albanese?
Counselor Thompson, do you have any further questions?
Yes, so I just want to clarify something as well, is that, say this was granted favorably out of this committee and ultimately granted favorably through the city council, that we're not granting it to be a buildable lot, right? We're not designating it
Right.
as a buildable lot.
No.
This does not comply with Brockton's, if it's going to be new construction, it does not comply with our buildable lot, the 30,000 square feet requirements.
it may be a grandfathered lot, but that's a discussion with the building inspector. And if he doesn't agree with me, then we go to zoning board.
So so at some point, it's either the administration's going to make a decision through their building department that you can build, or this matter would have to go in front of the zoning board.
I think, that's correct, and I think the decision that it wasn't a buildable lot was because of the deed restriction. They didn't base it upon building codes and ordinances about zoning.
Understood. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
And in fact, I had submitted an application to the Board of Appeals, and they came back and said, you know, you don't do the title, you know, when this comes in. The guy says it's not buildable, and I looked at it, I said, looks like they probably said it wasn't buildable because of 2712 considerations, and I filed an application to the Board of Appeals, and we didn't get to hearing. They just said, hey, see this deed restriction? So I said, well, I got to go someplace else. Yeah.
All right,
Sir.
Counselor Mendez, followed by Nicastro. I apologize.
So your client, he just purchased this property just cash without hiring an attorney to do a title search to be able to identify that.
I
this
didn't
was-
represent him. He
didn't
came to
think
me
you
after
did.
after he got turned down. For whatever reason, he didn't do the title. I think he truly relied on, you know, you can't rely on Ben for everything. You can't say, well, it's clear title. But he relied on the fact that it was buildable, and you know, he couldn't have done any research because he would have seen that.
And if this was not granted, what else could he use that lot for?
Just
Is
as
there
what
any-
it's being used for now, junk.
Just laying there. And how big is this lot? Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to drive by it either to see it, so I just...
Not 7,200 square feet. 7,200.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it meets the setback requirements, but it's only got 60 feet of frontage. Close to the size of the other lots in the neighborhood.
And if this is granted, he's looking to build a single
sorry?
family? If this is granted and then everything passes and gets approved, what is he looking to build there? A single family residence?
Single family, wood frame, 3-bedroom house. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a lot more work to do beyond this committee to get it to be a house.
To get it all passed and done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's all,
yeah,
Counselor?
thank you.
All right, Counselor Nicastro.
Thank you. Well, Attorney McCluskey, who was your client? He incorporated in November of 2015 Gormath LLC, whose purpose was to own and develop real estate. And so I did a quick look, half a page of property in the Plymouth Registry of Deeds, page and a half of property in Suffolk County Registry of Deeds, nothing in Norfolk. So your guy, he buys and sells real estate, and he's been around. He knows what he's doing. He's not a dumb schmuck.
You know, I've said it a number of times here. Quite frankly, he made a dumb decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he signed a memorandum of sale, which says in part, verbal descriptions by the city of Brockton, its agents, the custodian, or the auctioneer, or anyone connected with this sale, shall not invalidate nor become part of this sale as the buyer agrees they have examined the premises to their satisfaction and accepts all known and unknown defects. The City of Brockton, its agents, custodian, and the auctioneer shall not be liable for any reason whatsoever to the accuracy of the description of the listed premises, the bounds and involved building and/or building or taxes. The buyer is acquiring the property based solely on their independent investigation and inspection of the property, and not in reliance on any information, whether verbal or written, supplied or provided by the seller or any representative of the seller. I mean,
I've read it. Yep.
I'm sure, but I'm not sure everybody else has. And I've done 100 of these, and
Shame on him.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's a bummer about the sewer and the, you know, $20,000 and all that. And we don't want it to sit there and be a mess, but it's not our fault.
No, but let's fix it.
Not our fault.
Let's fix it. And that's the simple answer here. You know, you got a lot that, I'm sure that Jack doesn't like, you know, the way that lot looks up in his ward. Let's fix the problem. The guy's going to build a nice house. It's across from a park. It'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood. Let's not get hung up on the fact that he was an idiot.
Well, we're here 3.5 years later after he purchased it. Has he tried to sell it to an abutting lot owner?
Nobody's in. Why would the people buy it? If they think they have a vacant lot there that they can just throw all their garbage in,
Well,
they're not going to spend. They're the people that lost it.
The Dumases are still there?
No, they sold it. They sold it to. I haven't checked their deed, but they sold it to Manuela Jemsons, and I think they still
That's who
live
lost
there.
it the second
I
time.
think they still live there.
The problem the mistake that the city has been making, and shame on the city, is they don't require in their agreements for sale, they don't require the buyer to merge it into their current deed within so many months. We've tried to change that in the
Yeah.
last year. But, yeah, this is not the first one we've seen where the lot acquired from the city did not follow the principal lot or get merged in with it.
So how do we deal with the fact that it was misrepresented? That's not
wasn't.
fair either.
It
It
wasn't.
wasn't.
That's not right.
It wasn't misrepresented.
Wasn't.
Benny said it was a buildable lot.
You say. He says that, Gomez, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor
Gomez
Cruz.
says that. I don't see any piece of paper that everybody at those auctions knows.
It's as is.
I talked to Ben. Ben told
He
me.
should be suing Ben.
No, he was your agent. He was your auctioneer.
Yeah.
Yes, but then your client signed a memorandum of sale that says.
I get it, but
Whatever was said to you, you're not relying on it.
Yeah.
So, and those agreements hold up.
I've talked to Ben about this, and he says, he said, the reason why we didn't do a buildability is because they took too long. I did it myself. I told the guy it was a buildable lot, and he bought it.
All right.
That's not right.
Any further questions, councilors? Councilor Cruz?
Just a comment. Now, first of all, I'm interested in how this was sold. I thought it was under the abutters program. What I would like to know is, under what auspices we sold it? What program would we have been able to sell it without a public auction? Back to the original, to the Dumases. If it wasn't, the abutters program specifically talks about abutters, that will take less of a price for an abutter, and we put restrictions on it. And my biggest thing is about fairness. Once there are restrictions on, by taking them off later, we're saying to all those other 50 or 60 or 80 developers who might have come in and bid more than this person bid, if,
You know, you took one off recently for a guy that paid short money for
and
it.
I did not. I agree, and I think it's a real problem.
If you
We
did it for
shouldn't-
him for not paying much money, now this
We
guy
should,
paid
I agree, and we
I
shouldn't
know,
have, and
and I voted against
that's
it.
my problem. That's my problem, is that if we start doing that, we've now, who are we gonna get sued by that might have bought a lot 20 years ago that, because there was a restriction on that? You know, and I have a problem, first of all. I'd like to know under what auspices we sold this piece of property originally.
I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard.
And I'd like to look into that, because that does change some of my you know, the abutters program is what I was under the impression this was sold under.
Well, you
I
got
don't
an
know how we
orphan, you got
sold-
an orphan lot here it's a mess. And we're trying to figure out how to make it right. There's two sides to every story, and yeah, my guy was dumb, but he was sold a bill of goods.
But see, I don't think your guy was dumb. I think he took a flyer
Yep.
and,
I didn't get an affidavit from Ben, but I can, as an officer of the court, I can tell you that
and I didn't mean to imply that, I'm implying that the thing is, this guy knew, and he signed when he bought the piece of property.
so what? Let's make it right. You got
Well,
a-
see,
you
I
got a
happen to think it
lousy
is
lot
right.
here. You got
I
a
happen to
lousy
think it
lot
is
here
right.
that we need to fix.
And just to help clarify, Councilor Cruz.
Point of
looking-
information, Counselor?
Yes, point of information. I'm looking at the quitclaim deed to the Dumases. It says that it was under Chapter 60, Section 77.
It wasn't. Because if you look at the next deed, you put in, when you do them under auction, you'll recite that right in the deed. This
But I'll-
wasn't done under auction.
But I took a quick look at 6077B. It does also make mention of Section 80, where inadequate or lack or inadequate bids. Does that require a public auction as well? Or I think potentially it went to public auction and then, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. It
reading-
was, the city had title to it for 5 years. They didn't auction it off right away. They foreclosed the tax title and then, I mean, there had to have been some discussion going on here because they must have known, the Dumases must have known that there was a deed restriction going on. Because right away, right after that, it was sold. And you don't, when you buy at auction, you don't then say, oh, well, now we're getting a deed restriction. You know, so there's had to be some, it was a private sale from what I can see.
I
Yeah.
will say, you know, as the chairman, I don't want to get involved in a, one side or another kind of statement, but I will say I did speak with my predecessor, Councilor Daly, the counselor at the time this was put on.
Right.
She does not recall why it was put on, but she did not have an objection with its removal if that was what the council deemed was the best way forward. I will say I do see that property, going through the ward. It is in pretty rough shape, and it is right next to a park in an area that we are already trying to, revitalize and spruce up. So there is, as the ward counselor, I feel there is merit to, we're not, as Councilor Thompson said, we're not green lighting a house here. We're green lighting the possibility. We're allowing the developer and his attorney to pursue it. Oh. Hello?
I can
Hello?
hear you, so if
Okay,
I can
good.
hear you, it's working.
All right. What? No. All right. So I lost the mic there a little, but that's all I'm gonna state. As the counselor for the ward. But going back as the chair, are there any other counselors who would like to speak? Any counselors who'd like to say anything?
Well, just to finish up my previous
Counselor Johnson. Sorry about that.
Councilor Cruz, I'm completely in agreement with you regarding the abutters program. We should not be removing deed restrictions when a deal was made where all parties understood the terms of that deal. As you said, I don't think this is that. I think this is something different from that. And I just want to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Director May did say earlier about a different project, clear as mud, and I believe the origins of this are exactly that. We don't know how this originated. Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. I also don't think this is a butters lot program because the lot is too big. It exceeds 5,000 square feet. But I do know that in those years, they were trying to take city property and convey them to neighbors to reduce density. And it was a laudable thing, what they were trying to do, and they were getting state money to do it. And I think the result is the same. They were trying to reduce density. It should have gone with the property next door. I don't know why it didn't, but from here, it just doesn't seem right to release it. Now, no, we don't want a mess. We also don't want a windfall for somebody at our expense. And so it's tough to decide what to do, but I do think it was meant to not be built on, and that's why it was conveyed the way that it was.
You know,
Thank you,
you
Counselor.
mentioned a windfall, and I don't see it. This house isn't going to sell for $500,000. This is a small lot. I think at the time he paid fair market value for it. Maybe, you know, lots have gone up. Everybody thinks they're a builder today, and they throw money at these things. It's crazy what you see them paying for lots today. You know, it really is. But you don't want to see it as a vacant, lousy-looking lot either,
That's right.
you know. So we need to fix this.
All right. Counselors, any other counselor? With the exception of Counselor Mendez, everyone has spoken at least twice, so. Any other shot? No? All right, the chair would look favorably on a motion.
I make a motion to grant favorable the order.
There a second?
You'll second it for the vote.
All right. All in favor? All opposed? All right, this is recommended to the full council unfavorably.
So what happens from here?
It goes back to the full city council, and it is either referred to another committee. I know Councilor Farwell had mentioned looking to send it to finance, or it is voted on at the full council. This committee can only issue a recommendation.
Okay.
So it'll be up to the full council to decide whether or not to lift the restriction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
And before we, that's the last item on our agenda. I do just want to say something before we head out. You know, I want to thank our guests for coming, you know, the counselors for coming out, Treasurer Brophy for all the work setting up the meeting. We had to move the date around a couple of times, but I think it was important that we got this done and out of the way, these items done and out of the way. We don't know what we're looking at, you know, for the next little while at the very least when it comes to governance of the city, how it's going to look, how we're going to handle it. You know, so I appreciate that we were able to all get this out together. I appreciate all of your patience, you know, with this meeting. This is, you know, as I said earlier, this is the first time I've chaired a committee, so I do appreciate all of you sticking with me. Nobody left midway. And, you know, that's all I have. I would, you know, like to recommend to everyone here and the folks at home, you know, to stay safe, wash your hands, keep distancing like we have done. And I guess explain that we are having this with an empty chamber, televised, because of the open meeting rules that have changed thanks to the governor's executive order, and out of precaution for everyone's health and safety. Ordinarily, meetings like this are not televised. It's just finance and full council. But in light of the changing circumstances, we switched to live streaming it. That's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. All in favor? All right. Meeting adjourned.
Good job, Jack.